It's never the crime that gets you, it's the cover-up. And the French president's efforts to pass off this footage as an AI deepfake would have to be one of the most cynical and cack-handed cover-ups in history. And that is saying something, given that this was his way of subtly covering up the tissue-wrapped baggie of nose beers just a few weeks ago. Now, the actual moment itself on the plane is relatively unremarkable. It's no surprise that France's first couple don't get along very well. I mean, my mum wouldn't want me to still be living with her at his age either. So when I first saw this, it was just one of the many stories that I was happy to allow to pass me by, and I didn't feel the need to comment on it as part of the Topher Project. Until they tried to cover it up by passing it off at first as a deep fake. Now that is something we need to talk about, and in particular, we need to talk about what you should do about deep fakes. And we absolutely need to talk about deepfakes now, while you can still be confident that this really is me. My name is Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to make sense of the nonsense, and also to be aware of important trends and changes. And I hate to say it, but the age of deepfake political deception is upon us, both offensively, creating deepfake content to smear people, but also defensively, calling something a deepfake when it isn't, as was the case here. But before I talk about any of that, I want to thank all of you who have gotten behind me by buying me a coffee via the button on my website, topherfield.net, and also a big thank you to those who have grabbed a copy of my best-selling books, my multi-award-winning DVD, my t-shirts, my hoodies, all from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. The Topher Project, well, it's now what I do full-time. Now, I'm not news in the normal sense of the word. I am perspective. I observe what's going on in the world, and I look for trends and changes, and I especially look for things that aren't being covered well enough already in the mainstream media, and I shine my little spotlight onto those issues, giving them a perspective that I believe is helpful for you. Now, those of you who have supported my work, you are helping me to keep my little spotlight shining, and in fact, you're helping me to make my little spotlight a little bit bigger, and I really appreciate it. So if you haven't already, then please head over to topherfield.net and buy me a coffee via the little black button with a picture of a coffee on it, or head over to goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com and grab some books and merch, and keep in mind that they all make ideal gifts for others as well. Okay, deep fakes. We've known for a long time that deep fakes are coming. Now they're here. So what do we do about it? Well, deepfakes will be used, like I said, in both directions. They will in due course be made for the purpose of political deception, for ending people's public careers, and even as fake evidence in court cases and prosecutions. But also, the claim, the accusation that that's a deepfake will also be used, sometimes falsely, to spread doubt about real evidence. It is striking that in this case the Élysée Palace, i.e. the actual office of the French president, were the ones who tried to pass this video off as a deepfake. Now that was an ill-fated deception, because when such footage is released by the Associated Press, it is, at least for now, considered to be a gold star seal of authenticity. But hold that thought, because that won't remain true for much longer. More on that in a minute. Deep fakes are rarely actually used. There have been a few instances where they've been submitted to court cases as evidence and then uncovered as deep fakes, but examples of that are, relatively speaking, rare, and at least as far as we can tell, largely unsuccessful. What is more common than actual deep fakes is a defense claiming that that's a deep fake. And that is what the office of the French president tried to do here. But they were forced to backtrack when the Associated Press doubled down on the authenticity of the footage. The question has to be asked, why would the Élysée Palace even try such a stunt? And I think the answer is because they didn't expect the press to verify its authenticity. They thought that the footage was probably from the French press, who are very much tamed and act as a virtual official mouthpiece for Macron. If you doubt me, just observe how keen the French media were to cover up this little moment, claiming that the object hidden by President Macron was just a tissue, and not a tissue wrapped around a small bag of white powder. Yeah, because we all grin like an idiot when we get caught with just a tissue on the table in front of the world's press, don't we? That incident on the train out of Ukraine was just 2 weeks before this little lover's tiff on the tarmac in Vietnam. And after the tame French media led the way with the just a tissue lie, the rest of the world followed, obediently lining up to repeat the line that there was nothing unusual or untoward contained within that little tissue on the table. And with that prelude in mind, it's not really surprising that the office of the President of France would have assumed that they could lie about this moment as well, and the press would fall in line once again. But the Associated Press, to their credit, didn't, and a dramatic backtrack ensued from Macron's office. Now we are informed by the oh-so-trustworthy office of the French president, that the footage is indeed real, but that it's not what it looks like. Oh no, that was just a bit of friendly horsing around. Because that's what you do when you're a president and a president's wife on an official visit to a foreign country, and you're about to be revealed to the waiting world press. Let's not forget that Brigitte is 72 years of age. When was the last time you saw someone in their 70s horsing around like that? Me? Never. So the new excuse is just as unbelievable as the old one, but, and this is the important bit, the only reason the original excuse didn't become the official line, it's a deep fake, trotted out and repeated by all of the world's media just like the tissue line was, is because the Associated Press stood firm and told the truth in the face of the official cover-up by the French president. Now that is an incredibly slender thread upon which to hang something as precious as the truth. Right now, the Associated Press are essentially acting as the authenticator of that footage, and there's enough trust still remaining in them as a name, as a channel, as a source, that when they say, no, hang on, that actually happened, everyone believes them and not the French president. Sidebar, stop and actually think about that for a second. But what happens if at some point in the future a trusted authenticator isn't present? What if, instead of the Associated Press being the ones who took the footage, it really was just the tame French media who captured it? A moment like that. What happens when the Associated Press becomes tamed like all of the others? In an age of increasingly sophisticated deep fakes, it's going to be less about what is said or shown in a video and more about who is saying or showing it and whether we trust that channel. The counter to the age of deepfakes is actually trust through relationship and identity authentication. And I'm going to come back to that before the end of this video. But there is another danger here that's a bit more personal and more likely to actually affect you in some way. So I want to talk about that first. Because whilst deep fakes and the liar's dividend, as it's called, are useful for politicians, they are actually big business for scammers. There's been some very high-value deepfake scams already, even though the technology is still relatively in its infancy. In 2024, scammers got 200 million Hong Kong dollars, or about 40 million Australian dollars, by faking a video conference call leading to a finance worker believing they'd been told by their boss to make this very large transfer. Now, that sort of operation used to require a huge amount of technological know-how and resources to execute, but cheaper and easier scams using deepfakes are proliferating. To cite just a few examples, AI deepfakes are a catfisher's dream. And for those of you who were born way back in the 1900s, catfishing is when a scammer fakes a romantic interest online, usually with an older person, and convinces them to send large sums of money over to them because I need help, I'm in trouble in some way, or I'm going to buy a plane ticket, I'm going to come and live with you, or some other such lie. Now, catfishing was already very profitable just via email, but video deepfakes have enabled scammers to be incredibly convincing for anyone who's vulnerable. They create fake people that send video messages to their victims. Those videos can include all sorts of authenticating elements, like today's headlines on a newspaper that the AI is holding up while they're talking to you. And they'll give whatever personalized message and conversation the scammer wants to send, targeted to their particular victim. We are very, very close to such deep fakes being possible in real time as well, where instead of having to create a video in advance and send it as a video, it will very soon, and kind of already is, be possible for that to be done in real time with AI listening to what you say to them on a video call, writing an answer, feeding that answer into a video generation AI, and then feeding the resulting video back to you as if it's the video of someone who's really actually talking to you in real time. Now, like I said, arguably that can already be done, but it is still a bit clunky. But even if you have a good eye and you can spot the fakes right now, they are getting better and better, way faster than you can imagine, and it is only a matter of time before you won't be able to tell the difference anymore. But so what, you ask? If I don't get mixed up in online romances, then I'll be completely safe, right? Not quite, because scammers have absolutely no conscience whatsoever. And a rapidly growing scam involves you receiving a phone call, or even these days a video call, from a loved one who is in terrible distress. Maybe they've been injured in an accident or kidnapped, or they're overseas and alone, they've been robbed, and they need you to send them money right now. There was the case of Jennifer DiStefano in 2023 who got a phone call from what she thought was her 15-year-old daughter. She was in terrible distress, saying that she had been kidnapped, and there was another voice that demanded she pay $50,000 for her daughter's release. Well, thankfully, Jennifer suspected a scam, and she directly contacted her daughter while she was on the scam call, and she confirmed with her daughter that everything was actually just fine. That deepfake evidence was handed over to police, but they did very little with it because it's so common and so hard to investigate that they just classify such calls as prank calls and leave it at that. Now, technology has moved on even since then, and we're now seeing such calls being done with video instead of just with voice, trying to convince usually more elderly people to part with money for the welfare of one of their loved ones. And all they need, the scammers, in order to create a pretty convincing fake version of you or someone you love, is a few seconds of video with voice of you or your loved one talking on camera, and hey presto, they can fake you well enough that these scams now rake in hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and the tech is only just getting started. And if they only need a few seconds to fake someone, then I'm screwed, because there's literally thousands of hours of footage of me on the internet, and there's not much I can do to change that. I can't stop a deep fake from being done to me at some point in the future, and there's not much that you can do to stop it being done with you or with one of your loved ones. But there is a lot that we can all do to stop it from working if it is tried against you. Now, in the case of your loved ones, what I suggest is you have a chat with your family about a family password, a word that you all agree on in advance, but you keep secret outside of your family. That is the word that you will use if you really are in distress, to verify to your loved ones that it really is you and you really are in trouble. So that if you get a call or a video, you don't believe it unless it includes that secret authenticating word. Yeah, it's low tech, but it does make a difference in moments like that. Now, like I said earlier, the future solution to deepfakes will lie in a combination of relationship and authentication. And when it comes to you and your loved ones, I can't think of a better way to do it than a secret word, and it's up to you and your loved ones to be prepared in advance. But that doesn't work in the case of public figures like politicians or someone like me. At least for the time being, it shouldn't be hard to determine what's real and what's not, though, because we still have authentication with our accounts online. If it looks like I've posted something online that seems a bit off, verify that it's on one of my channels and not on some random TikTok account. If it's on my official YouTube or other official channel, well, at least at that point you know that whoever made that video is either me or has access to my logins at the very least, so the chances of it being a deep fake are pretty slim. In this case, you're essentially relying on the authentication provided by the platform itself, YouTube or X or whatever, but you do still have to be a little bit careful because scammers can and do copy, for example, my Facebook page regularly. They copy my name, my pictures, my posts. But what they don't have on those fake pages is, in the case of Facebook, 91,000 followers. So if you just quickly check the follow account and it's 0, you can very quickly spot a fake account, even a convincing fake account with convincing deep fake videos on it. Just check the page. Check the follow account and make sure that it really is my page and not just a lookalike page. And that applies to every public figure online, not just to me. So there's that. But in the case of politics and the news, well, that gets even harder to authenticate again. So I suggest you just take everything with a big grain of salt. Believe nothing that you hear and only half of what you see, because we are entering an age where seeing is no longer believing. And if you think misinformation is a problem already, wait until you see what it's like in 2030. Now, in time, I believe actually we'll see blockchain-enabled authentication, which will allow us to verify that people are who they claim to be directly using cryptography, but that is a topic for another time. And it's going to take time to get to the place where that's widely in use. In the meantime, the fog of war that AI deepfakes will create and the liar's dividend will confuse us all. But finally, and this is my most important piece of advice on this topic, I suggest that you and me and every single one of us seek out and cultivate in-person connection, relationships, anywhere that we can find them. Church, the pub, sports clubs, hobby groups, at work. Wherever you can connect with real people in the flesh, do it. Prioritize it. Maybe even take the time to read some books on people skills and small talk and networking to improve your in-person skills. Because if you think about where the world is and where it's heading, the world that we're heading into, it's becoming increasingly possible to live entirely in a world of deep fakery, in a world of digital fantasy. In that world, it's what's truly real that will become the most valuable, and the people with skills in the real world will very quickly have the most valuable skills of all. See, in a world where all your fantasies can come true, all your fantasies become worthless. And yes, for a time, people will throw themselves headlong into this coming digital world of deep fakery and fantasy perfection, this digital alternative reality. But not long after that, a very large percentage of people will turn around and come looking for something real, because in the end, that fantasy is going to be empty, and they'll know it. People will taste that easy digital perfection and find that it turns to ashes in their mouths, and then they will come looking for the imperfect reality. And they'll prefer it even if it tastes a little bitter sometimes. We have an opportunity to see what's coming and the way the world is changing, and to keep what is real front and center in our lives all the way through, to not get sucked in to this world of fakery and fantasy. And if we do that, and we build a community of like-minded people around us, a community that is grounded in reality, then when the time comes that others, having indulged in this new digital fantasy world, start to unplug and seek out what is real, then they'll be able to find us. My name is Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I help busy people like you to navigate the changes in the world as they happen. I am 100% viewer supported, so please buy me a coffee via the button at topherfield.net. Grab a copy of my books, DVDs, and merch from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. And thank you so much for watching to the end. Now, YouTube tells me a majority of my viewers are not actually subscribed yet, and I'd really appreciate your help to reach the magical 100,000 subscribers on YouTube milestone. So if you're not already subscribed, please fix that now. And as always, stay free.